Okay, very good morning to one and all present over here. Well, students, today is in physics class. We will start the new chapter, that is friction, isn't it? Students, are you ready to understand the friction? Very important topic and very useful in our practical life, isn't it? So, without wasting too much of time, we are coming to the topic, isn't it? Students, you please pay focus over the board. The topic is part now, friction, isn't it? The first question arises, what do you mean by friction, isn't it? What is friction? Friction or force of friction, it is always same, right? You see, when one body slides over the surface of another body, see, when one body slides over the surface of another body, then a force comes into play in between the surfaces in contact of these two bodies to oppose the relative motion of the body which is sliding over the surface of another body. This opposing force which is now coming or acting between the surfaces of the contact of two bodies, that opposing force is called force of friction, isn't it? That is called what? The force of friction. So you please try to understand, whenever a body moves or tends to move the surface of another body, a force comes into play which acts parallel to the surfaces of contact and opposes the relative motion. Clear? This is called what? Now this opposing force is called friction or force of friction. Isn't it? You understand, students? Have a problem? No problem. Now you see, as the friction is a force, that's why friction will be also measured in the same unit. And you know the SI unit of force is what? Newton. So friction will be also measured in Newton. One more thing, you will see that what is the main cause of friction? How does the friction occur? Why does the friction occur? The main cause of friction is on account of the roughness or irregularities of the surfaces in contact. You see, when one body slides over the surface of another body, then the roughness or irregularities of the surfaces interlock to each other. As a result, okay, one force is now acting or developing in between the two surfaces, which is now right. What happens? Opposes the relative motion. You see, this is the roughness of the surface. Suppose this one surface here, and another you see. So then you find these interlocking part. These are part of interlocking part. This is the actual area of contact where here what happens, the two surfaces are now pressing to each other. Here that becomes part now, the bond is developed. In order to break this bond, we have to apply the bond force. This interlocking at the point of actual contact is now on account of the friction. Well, students, now please come to the point. Types of friction. You have to study about the types of friction. Secondly, friction is of two types, a static friction and dynamic friction. That dynamic friction is also known as the kinetic frictions. And a kinetic friction is of two types. One is sliding friction and another is what now? A rolling friction. And this a static friction is also known as the self-adjusting friction. Understand? Self-adjusting friction. So first of all, you please see, it is quite clear from the word a static friction. When one body is resting over the another body and force is applied over the body to make it in motion. Still the body is not moving. Then the force which comes into play in between the surfaces in contact to each other before the movement of the body, that force, that opposing force is called now a static friction. The definition of a static friction or self-adjusting friction is partner the force of friction which comes into play between the two bodies before one body actually starts moving over the surface of another body. That is called what now? A static friction. Students, you understand? By this figure, you can also understand, and whenever you please see, suppose you are now placing a book over that table and you find you are applying the force of pull, and you see here it is what now? Force of friction, and the body is not moving. This means now this is on account of the static friction, isn't it? A static friction. A static friction generally depends upon the nature of the surfaces of the two bodies in contact. Second point is what now? The static friction does not exist by itself. The static friction is also known as the self-adjusting friction, isn't it? Now, whenever suppose a force here, suppose here it is now we are finding this is now force applied. Force applied. Here it is what now? Friction. So you please find that now when the force is applied and in the same proportion friction is also increasing. Clear? Same proportion the friction is also increasing. Then which is the case of the static friction. And the maximum value of the static friction which comes into play when the body just starts moving over the surface of another body, that is called what now? Limiting friction. Suppose one body is now, it is when we are applying the force, and clear. Suppose we are applying the force and body is just still now is not in motion, but now the maximum point when the body attains, and just after the little amount of force is applied over the body and the body starts now moving, that maximum value of the static friction is called what now? Limiting friction. You understand? That is called what now? Limiting frictions. Well, students, now we are moving towards the kinetic friction, that is called dynamic friction, and your group may be also sliding friction. It is quite obvious from the word kinetic friction. The kinetic friction or dynamic friction. The force of friction which comes into play when a body is in a static of steady motion, in a state of steady motion over the surface of another body. When one body is now moving over the surface of another body, then the force of friction which comes into play to oppose the relative motion. Here the case is what now? The body is already in motion, but still one friction is acting over it to oppose the relative motion. This kind of friction is called what now? Kinetic friction or dynamic friction. Student, do you understand? The static friction will be when the body is at rest. However, the kinetic friction occurs when the body is in motion. This kinetic friction is also known as dynamic friction. The word is what now? Kinema. Kinema means what now? Motion. And in the case of kinetic friction, we are also learning about the sliding friction and rolling friction. Sliding friction is what? When one body is sliding over the surface of another body. Then the force of friction which comes into play to oppose the relative motion is called sliding friction. When a force of friction which comes into play when the body is rolling over the surface of another body, that is called what now? Rolling friction. These all applications of this. And here you will one more thing just I want to make you clear. Yes, the static friction is more than the kinetic friction. Kinetic friction is more than the sliding friction, and sliding friction is more than the rolling friction. These all things comparative study will be taught to you in later on in later class. Thank you. Thank you.